far, or that much, I should say, in chapter 2, part B. So we ended with The Same Goes On in America Today. And this is Pawns in the Game by William Guy Carr. And here we go. Let's see. The head of the Jewish underground in England at that time was a Jew named de Souza. The great Jew, Fernandez Carvalho, had used his influence to have de Souza appointed Portuguese ambassador. It was in his house, protected by diplomatic immunity, that the leaders of the Jewish revolutionary underground remained hidden and worked out their plots and intrigue. Once the revolution had been decided upon, the Jewish plotters introduced Calvinism into England to split church and state and divide the people. Contrary to general belief, Calvinism is of Jewish origin. It was deliberately conceived to split the adherents of the Christian religions and divide the people. Calvin's real name was Cohen. When he went from Geneva to France to start preaching his doctrine, he became known as Calvin. Then in England, it became Calvin. Huh. Really? History proves that there is hardly a revolutionary plot that wasn't hatched in Switzerland. There is hardly a Jewish revolutionary leader who hasn't changed his name. At the B'nai B'rith celebrations held in Paris, France in 1936, Calvin, or Calvin, whatever his name may have been, was enthusiastically acclaimed to have been of Jewish descent. In addition to the religious controversy, the revolutionary leaders organized armed mobs to aggravate every situation injected into politics and labor by their masters. Isaac Disraeli, 1766 to 1848, a Jew and father of Benjamin Disraeli, who afterwards became Lord Beaconsfield, deals with this angle of the British Revolution in detail in his 2-volume story, The Life of Charles II. He remarks that he obtained considerable information from the records of Melchior de Salem, a Jew who was French envoy to the British government at that time. Disraeli draws attention to the great similarity or pattern of the revolutionary activities which preceded both the British and the French revolutions. In other words, the handiwork of the secret and real directors of the World Revolutionary Movement, WRM, could clearly be seen in both, a fact which we'll proceed to prove. The evidence which absolutely convicts Oliver Cromwell of participating in the Jewish revolutionary plot was attained by Lord Alfred Douglas, who edited a weekly review, Plain English, published by the North British Publishing Company. In an article which appeared in the issue of September 3rd, 1921, he explained how his friend, Mr. L.D. van Volkert of Amsterdam, Holland, had come into possession of a missing volume of records of the synagogue of Mulgium. This volume had been lost during the Napoleonic Wars. The volume contains records of letters written to and answered by the director of the synagogue. They are written in German. One entry, dated June 16, 1647, reads, from O.C., i.e. Oliver Cromwell, to Ebenezer Pratt. In return for financial support, will advocate admission of Jews to England. This, however, impossible while Charles living. Charles cannot be executed without trial, adequate grounds for which do not at present exist. Therefore, advise that Charles be assassinated, but will have nothing to do with arrangements for procuring an assassin, though willing to help in his escape. In reply to this dispatch, the record shows E. Pratt wrote a letter dated July 12, 1647, addressed to Oliver Cromwell. Will grant financial aid as soon as Charles removed and Jews admitted. Assassination too dangerous. Charles should be given an opportunity to escape. His recapture will then make trial and execution possible. The support will be liberal, but useless to discuss terms until trial commences. On November 12th that same year, Charles was given the opportunity to escape. He was, of course, recaptured. Hollis and Ludlow, authorities on this chapter of history, are both on record as considering the flight as the stratagem of Cromwell. After Charles had been recaptured, events moved apace. Cromwell had the British Parliament purged of most members he knew were loyal to the king. Notwithstanding this drastic action, when the House sat all night on December 5th, 1648, the majority agreed that the concessions offered by the king were satisfactory to a settlement. Any such settlement would have disqualified Cromwell from receiving the blood money promised him by the international money barons through their agent E. Pratt, so Cromwell struck again. Excuse me. He ordered Colonel Pride to purge Parliament of those members who had voted in favor of a settlement with the king. What then happened is referred to in school history books as Pride's Purge. When the purge was finished, 50 members remained. They are recorded as the Rump Parliament. They usurped absolute power. On January 9, 1649, a High Court of Justice was proclaimed for the purpose of putting the King of England on trial. 2/3 of the members of the court were levelers from Cromwell's army. The conspirators couldn't find an English lawyer who would draw up a criminal charge against King Charles. Carvajal instructed an alien Jew, Isaac Dorislaus, Manasseh ben Israel's agent in England, to draw up the indictment upon which King Charles was tried. Charles was found guilty of the charges levied against him by the international Jewish moneylenders, not by the people of England. On January 30th, 1649, he was publicly beheaded in front of the banqueting house at Whitehall, London. The Jewish moneylenders, directed by the high priest of the Synagogue of Satan, had their revenge because Edward I had expelled the Jews from England. Oliver Cromwell received his blood money just as Judas had done. History proves that the international Jewish moneylenders had a purpose other than revenge for getting rid of Charles. They removed him to obtain control of England's economy and government. They planned to involve many European countries in war with England. Great sums of money are needed to fight wars. By loaning the crown heads of Europe the money required to fight wars they fomented, the internationalists were enabled to rapidly increase the national debts of all European nations. The chronological sequence of events from the execution of King Charles in 1649 to the institution of the Bank of England in 1694 shows how the national debt was increased. The international bankers used intrigue and cunning to throw Christians at each other's throats. 1649, Cromwell, financed by Jews, waged war in Ireland, captures Drogheda and Wexford. British Protestants blamed for persecution of Irish Catholics. 1650, Montrose, in rebellion against Cromwell, captured and executed. 1651, Charles II invades England, defeated and flees back to France. 1652, England involved in war with Dutch. 1653, Cromwell proclaims himself Lord Protector of England. 1654, England involved in more wars. 1656, trouble started in American colonies. 1657, death of Cromwell, son Richard named Protector. 1659, Richard, disgusted with intrigue, resigns. 1660, General Monk occupies London, Charles II proclaimed king. 1661, truth revealed regarding intrigue entered into by Cromwell and his cohorts Ireton and Bradshaw causes serious public reaction. Bodies are exhumed and hung from gallows in Tyburn Hill, London. 1662. Religious strife is engendered to divide members of the Protestant denominations. Nonconformists to the established Church of England are persecuted. 1664. England is again involved in war with Holland. 1665. A Great Depression settles over England. Unemployment and shortages of food undermine the health of the people, and the Great Plague breaks out. 1666. England involved in a war with France and Holland. 1667. Cabal agents start new religious and political strifes. 1674. England and Holland make peace. The men directing international intrigue change their characters. They become matchmakers. They elevate plain Mr. William Stadtholder to the rank of Captain General of the Dutch forces. He became William, Prince of Orange. It was arranged that he meet Mary, the eldest daughter of the Duke of York. The Duke was only one place removed from being King of England. 1677. Princess Mary of England married William, Prince of Orange. To place William, Prince of Orange upon the throne of England, it was necessary to get rid of both Charles II and the Duke of York, who was slated to become James II. 1683, the Rye House plot was hatched. The intention to assassinate both King Charles II and the Duke of York, it failed. 1685, King Charles II died. The Duke of York became King James II of England. Immediately, a campaign of infamy was stated against King James II. The Duke of Monmouth was persuaded or bribed into leading an insurrection to overthrow the king. On June 30th, the Battle of Sedgemoor was fought. Monmouth was defeated and captured. He was executed July 15th. In August, Judge Jeffreys opened what historians have named the Bloody Assizes. Over 300 persons concerned in the Monmouth Rebellion were sentenced to death under circumstances of atrocious cruelty. Nearly 1,000 others were condemned to be sold as slaves. This was a typical example of how the secret powers working behind the scenes create conditions for which other people are blamed. Others are aroused to take active opposition against those they blame. They in turn are liquidated. King James still had to be disposed of before William of Orange could be placed on the throne to carry out their mandate. Every person in England was bewitched and bewildered. They were not allowed to know the truth. They blamed everyone and everything except the secret powers who were pulling the strings. Then the conspirators made their next move. 1688, they ordered William, Prince of Orange, to land in England at Turbay. This he did on November 5th. King James abdicated. He fled to France. He had become unpopular by reason of the campaign of infamy, intrigue, and his own foolishness and culpability. 1689, William of Orange and Mary were proclaimed King and Queen of England. King James did not intend to give up the throne without a fight. He was a Catholic, so the secret powers set up William of Orange as the champion of the Protestant faith. On February 5th, 1689, King James landed in Ireland. The Battle of the Boyne was fought by men of definite and opposing religious convictions. The battle has been celebrated by Orangemen on the 12th of July ever since. There is probably not one Orangeman in 10,000 who knows that all the wars and rebellions fought from 1640 to 1689 were fomented by the international moneylenders for the purpose of putting themselves in position to control British politics and economy. Their first objective was to obtain permission to institute a Bank of England and consolidate and secure the debts Britain owed them for loans made to her to fight the wars they instigated. History shows how they completed their plans. In the final analysis, none of the countries and people involved in the wars and revolutions obtained any lasting benefits. No permanent or satisfactory solution was reached regarding the political, economic, and religious issues involved. The only people to benefit were the small group of moneylenders who financed the wars and revolutions, and their friends and agents who supplied the armies, the ships, and the munitions. It is important to remember that no sooner was the Dutch general sitting upon the throne of England than he persuaded the British Treasury to borrow £1,250,000, I think that is, liers, something like that, from the Jewish bankers who had put him there. The school book history informs our children that the negotiations were conducted by Sir John Hublin and Mr. William Patterson on behalf of the British government with moneylenders whose identity remained secret. Search of several documents reveal that in order to maintain complete secrecy, the negotiations regarding the terms of the loan were carried on in a church. In the days of Christ, the moneylenders used the temple. In the days of William of Orange, they desecrated a church. The international moneylenders agreed to accommodate the British Treasury to the extent of £1,250,000, liers, providing they could dictate their own terms and conditions. This was agreed to. The terms were in part: 1, that the names of those who made the loan remain secret, and that they be granted a charter to establish a Bank of England. 2, that the directors of the Bank of England be granted the legal right to establish the gold standard for currency by which. 3, they could make loans to the value of £10 for every £1 value of gold they had on deposit in their vaults. 4, that they permitted to consolidate the national debt and secure payment of amounts due as principal and interest by direct taxation of the people. Wow. Thus, for the sum of £1,250,000, King William of Orange sold the people of England into economic bondage. The Jewish moneylenders gained their ambitions. They had usurped the power to issue and control the currency of the nation, and having secured that power, they cared not who made the laws. Just what the acceptance of the gold standard meant is best illustrated by citing a simple transaction. The directors of the Bank of England could loan £1,000 for every £100 worth of gold they had on deposit as security. They collected interest on the full £1,000 loan. At 5%, this amounts to £50 a year. Therefore, at the end of the first year, the bankers collected back 50% of the amount they had originally put up to secure the loan. If a private individual wished to obtain a loan, the bankers made him put up security in the form of property, stocks, or bonds, much in excess of the value of the loan he required. If he failed to meet payments of principal and interest, foreclosure proceedings were taken against his property. The moneylenders obtained many times the value of the loan. The international bankers never intended that England be allowed to pay off the national indebtedness. The plan was to create international conditions which would plunge all nations concerned deeper and deeper into their debt. As far as England is concerned, in only 4 years, 1694 to 1698, the national debt was increased from 1 to 16 million pounds sterling. This debt accumulated because of wars. It is interesting to note that John Churchill, 1650 to 1722, became the leading military figure during this period of English history. Because of his military genius and his service to Britain, he was created the first Duke of Marlborough. The secret power behind the world revolutionary movement pulled the necessary strings and brought about the wars of the Spanish Succession. In 1701, the Duke of Marlborough was made commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Holland. No less an authority than the Jewish Encyclopedia records the fact that for his many services, the Duke of Marlborough received not less than £6,000 a year from the Dutch Jewish banker Solomon Medina. The events leading up to the French Revolution show how between 1698 and 1815, the national debt of Britain was increased by £885 million. Wow. By 1945, the British national debt had reached the astronomical figure of, are you serious? I don't know if I can say this, 503,332,372 pounds. And for the years 1945 to 1946, the carrying charges alone amounted to $445,446,241. As an Irish economist remarked, only a Jewish-controlled organization would insist on the odd pound. Wow. All right, I'm going to end that there, brothers and sisters. Next time we will pick up in chapter 3. There are so many footnotes I would really like to read, because that will help you to see where they're getting their information from, because I think that's very important. They use the Pear's Encyclopedia, the Jewish Encyclopedia, Volume 5, page 41, 1925. It states Edom is a modern Jewry. Also, Professor Lothrop Stoddard, the eminent ethnologist, states the Jews' own records admit that 82% of those who subscribe to political Zionist movement are Ashkenazim, so-called Jews, but not Semitic. There are many different opinions on these racial matters. Number 3, the Forrestal Diaries, Viking Press, New York, 1951. Some readers claim Justinianus had no such purpose. I claim knowledge of wrong spurs men to create corrective legislation and laws. The same evil influences are responsible for the same evil conditions which exist in all big cities today. Bauer is the Jewish goldsmith who established the House of Rothschild in Frankfurt on the Main. He and his compeers plotted the French Revolution of 1789. 7, because hate and revenge on the stock and trade of the forces of evil, they will use any pretext to foment wars and revolutions, even to using the name of God, whom they hate. 8, the book Aaron of Lincoln, Shapiro, Valentine, and Company gives interesting info regarding this period of history. Valentine's Jewish Encyclopedia has this to say: their numbers and prosperity increased. Aaron of Lincoln, whose house still stands to this day, became the richest man in England. His financial transactions, covering the whole country and concerning many of the leading nobles and churchmen. On his death, his properties passed to the Crown, and a special branch of the Exchequer had to be created to deal with the estates. 9. The statutes of Jewry were printed in detail as Appendix 1 in The Nameless War by Captain A.H.M. Ramsay. Excuse me. 10. Because the Jews were being evicted from all European countries, Kimor, rabbi of Arles and province, sought advice from the Sanhedrin, then located in Constantinople. His appeal was dated January 13th, 1489. The reply arrived back November 1459. Wow, that was what? His appeal was dated January 13th, 1489. The reply arrived back November. That don't make any sense, because am I reading that wrong? 1459. It was signed VSS VFF, Prince of the Jews. It advised the rabbis to use the tactics of the Trojan horse. Christian and make their sons priests, laymen, lawyers, and doctors, etc., so they could destroy the Christian structure from within. 11. The Encyclopedia Britannica on page 67, volume 13, 1947, has this to say. The 14th century was the golden age of the Jews in Spain. In 1391, the preaching of a priest in Seville, Fernando Martinez, led to the first general massacre of the Jews, who were envied for their prosperity and hated because they were the king's tax collectors. 12. This is dealt with more fully in the chapters on Spain. 13. H.G. Wells defines the differences very clearly in his Outline of History, pages 493 to 494. 14. It does even today. Illegal entry into the United States and into Palestine has reached unprecedented numbers since the end of World War II. Evidence will be produced to prove the underground is invariably associated with the antisocial character who constitute the underworld. 15. Sombert's work, The Jews and the Modern Capitalism, and the Jewish Encyclopedia bear out the above statement. 16. This policy has been common practice ever since. The Soviet embassies in every country have been turned into the headquarters of intrigue and espionage, as further evidence will prove. 17. This fact was commented upon in the Catholic Gazette in February of that year. 18. Charles was in custody at this time. 19. It is important to note that school history books make no mention of the two opposing groups of men who have been the secret power behind international affairs who made history. This policy seems to have been by tacit agreement. 20. The outbreak of the Great Fire of London, known as the Great Cleaner, ended the plague. 21. The word cabal is closely related to Kabbalah, a Are you serious? Oh my God. A mysterious Hebrew theosophy dating back into antiquity, but which became very active during the 10th and succeeding centuries. Kabbalah was announced as a special revelation which enabled rabbis to explain to the Jewish people the hidden meanings of the sacred writings. Pear's Encyclopedia, 57th edition, page 529, says, Kabbalism was later carried to great excess. Kabbalah lists leaders pretending to read signs and evidence in letters and forms and numbers contained in the scriptures. The French name this mysterious rite Cabal. The French use the term cabal to designate any group of political or private intriguers. The English coined the name cabal because the chief personages concerned with the Kabbalistic intrigue in England were Clifford, Ashley, Buckingham, Arlington, and Lauderdale, in that order. The first letter of their names spell, it does, cabal. You gotta be kidding. Clifford, Ashley, Buckingham, Arlington, and Lauderdale, in that order. That is so queer. The first letter of their name spelled cabal. Kabbalists were the instigators of various forms of political and religious unrest during the unhappy reign of Charles II. 22. The identity of the men who control the Bank of England still remain a secret. The Macmillan Committee, appointed in 1929 to throw light on the subject, failed completely. Mr. Montagu Norman, the official head of the Bank of England, was most evasive and non-committal in any answer he made to the committee. For further particular, read Facts About the Bank of England by A.N. Field, page 4. 23. If such a policy is carried to its logical conclusion, it is only a matter of time before the international moneylenders control the wealth, natural resources, and man-made power of the entire world. History shows how rapidly they have progressed toward their goal since 1694. Number 24. The Duke is the direct ancestor of Sir Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of England today, i.e. 1954. Churchill is self-acknowledged as having been the foremost Zionist of this era. He is the man most responsible for the influencing the United Nations to create the State of Israel. And that ends our reading. Till next time, keep Keep your eyes on Jesus, brothers and sisters. This is a deep hole here. To me it is. It's changed things left and right. I don't even know what to say. So, seriously, keep your nose in the book, which is the Word of God. And let us embed the Word of God upon the tables of our hearts, so you and I will not be deceived. Well, will not sin against God or be deceived. Because I'm telling you what, this stuff is insane. I don't know if I can handle this meat. I'll be honest with you. This is meat that I never expected in my life, ever. Love y'all. Bye-bye.